So a few days ago, I interviewed Dr. Neal Barnard and Shauné Hayes, where we talked about some of the key weight loss principles, strategies, and tips from Dr. Barnard's new book, The Power Foods Diet. We're about to dive into the interview here in a sec, but I just wanted to address something very quickly. I've noticed that the audio quality isn't up to usual standards. As such, I've actually had to cut out about 10 minutes of the interview, specifically in the section where we're talking about calorie-burning foods, which is really fascinating, so it's a real pity, but it was totally inaudible. In the remainder of the interview, there are some minor audio issues, but these are intermittent, so if you do hear some feedback or a little bit of echo, especially for example in the introduction that we're about to jump right into, rest assured that it does die down pretty quickly. So stick with me here. Even though the audio is not perfect, I'm 100% confident that you're going to get loads from this insightful and inspiring conversation. So strap in, get ready to take some notes. I know you're going to love this one. Enjoy. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome two very special guests to my channel today. Dr. Neal Barnard is president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, faculty member of the George Washington University School of Medicine, and New York Times best-selling author of several titles, including the frankly pioneering book, Dr. Neal Barnard's Program for Reversing Diabetes. Dr. Barnard, not to schmooze you too much early on here, but frankly, you're the tip of the spear when it comes to educating folks on this plant-based message. And I've been following you closely for my nearly 10 years eating this way. So on both a personal and a professional note, it's a pleasure having you here. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you today.
Thank you. And Shauné Hayes is a former yo-yo dieter turned plant-based success story with a frankly astonishing, and I can't wait to talk about this, Shauné, a frankly astonishing 100-pound weight loss. Wow. Yeah. And is now turned certified health coach, guiding and inspiring thousands of people online to make healthier choices. Shauné, thanks also to you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, for having me.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Neal, I'm going to start with you, if I may, and then I'd like to hand over to you, Shauné, to hear more about your remarkable transformation. But Neal, what is the Power Foods Diet? And in this social media age where everything seems so polarized and conflicting, why is this the solution and not keto or paleo or intermittent fasting?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. Up until now, people who have wanted to lose weight have really tortured themselves. The idea is it's something about how much I'm eating, so I've got to eat a lot less. And for decades, people have said, well, maybe I should just count calories. And instead of 1,800 calories, which might be normal, I'm going to cut down to just 1,000 or 800. And that makes sense, and you lose some weight. But first of all, it's really hard. I mean, by Wednesday, you're ready to eat the sofa. Secondly, it could set you up to binge. Third, you kind of get stuck after a while, and you're not really losing the weight the way you would like to. And if you break it, you feel there's something wrong with you. We don't blame the diet; we blame ourselves, and we think, what's wrong? Other people, the people in the magazine seem to succeed. I can't succeed. Or you'll go on a keto diet that says carbohydrate is the devil. So if you ever eat an apple or a banana or an orange, there's something wrong with that, and you think, could I have bread or a bowl of cereal or something like that? And the diet says, no, you can't have any of these things. So what we've realized is that research has shown that we can turn this around. Instead of focusing on all the negatives, we can focus on certain foods that really love us back. Now, the scientific way I'm going to put it is there are 3 different things that foods can do for us, according to new scientific studies, which are super exciting. The first is certain foods tame your appetite. They fill you up. When at the point of satiety, you've eaten about 200 or 300 calories less than you would have otherwise eaten. Secondly, there are certain foods that trap calories. They go down your digestive tract, and like a sponge, they find calories you haven't absorbed yet. They carry them out with the waste before you can absorb them, and you literally flush these calories down the toilet. And the third thing is that there are foods that boost your calorie burn. They boost your metabolism. So for 3, 4, 5 hours after the meal, your body's just burning calories. And if you add it up, you discover that these foods do the work for you, and you're never counting calories anymore. You're not hungry anymore. You're not saying no to your favorite bread or sweet potato or whatever it is. And these foods love you back. So the science is in, and we're able to put this to work.
So I don't know if this is a reasonable summary, but in other words, when you start to eat lots of quote unquote the right foods, those typical rules of weight loss or dieting, quote unquote, can be somewhat discarded, I think is what you're saying. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's exactly right. And certain foods are better than others. To be obvious, a potato versus a potato chip. You know, the potato chips aren't as good as the potato because you baked in lots of grease and so forth with it. And thinking more broadly, there are lots of foods that are better than others. 2015, Harvard researchers published what for me was a turning point. They tracked more than 100,000 people and they looked at their diets and they looked at their body weights. And they found that if you ate more of certain foods over time, if you increased your consumption of these foods, your weight would tend to go down over time. And just real quick, let me just give you these six of their big foods. Number six was the bean group: beans, peas, lentils. So that bowl of lentil soup is looking kind of good. Number five was the melon group, and that could be cantaloupes or watermelon, something like that. Number four, citrus fruits: oranges, grapefruits, even orange juice seemed to work. Number three was green vegetables like spinach or, frankly, your morning salad, depending on what junk you put on the top of it. Number two, cruciferous vegetables in specific. So broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. And the number one, the champion of weight loss foods of all, was this humble food, the berry, the blueberry. Blueberry, no, you don't eat one, you eat lots of them. Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. And they're all in the top group. And we then started to understand what's in the blueberry, where does that blue color come from, and how could that affect your body weight? And if you put it to the test, does it really work? So those are all things that I'm writing about in the Power Foods diet that people can put to work for themselves.
Brilliant. And we're going to talk about the availability, when the book's available and so on as we go here. And I can't wait. I'm excited to dive into some of these concepts, the appetite taming stuff, the calorie burning foods. Brilliant. And Shauné, what Neal has just summarized for us, this is the very approach that you use to lose 100 pounds and take back control of your health. Firstly, I'm wondering, could you tell us a little bit about the state of your health prior to discovering this way of eating?
Absolutely. So yeah, what he just described is exactly what I did. I would say before discovering this way of eating, I was definitely in poor health. Since I was an adolescent, I've dieted, for years. I counted the calories, restricted and weighed food. But I was also dealing with some chronic health issues and, health problems at the time. And so I'm talking hypertension, elevated cholesterol, prediabetes, arthritis. I also had a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so my weight had gotten up to 278 pounds. And Ryan, if I'm honest, I was very unhappy and very uncomfortable in my body and in a lot of pain physically and emotionally.
Yeah, no wonder. And I read that you were able to stop 5 medications. So we're just talking about the weight loss, but obviously with that, a bunch of health benefits or, the alleviation of many of these health conditions by the sounds of it. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, I was trying to manage these conditions with medication. I was on 4 or 5 different medications at the time. And so, like I said, prior to discovering this way of eating, I was just at a very low point in my life. I really was.
Mm. Well, it's quite the story. Thanks for being so honest and open about it. Can I ask, because I think this is so fascinating to people at home, people's motivations. Was there a turning point for you? Was there a point, or was it progressive? Was there a point that you reached at which you start to think, right, I've got to get really serious about this now?
It was. I say unfortunately, but fortunately, a health scare was the turning point for me. Waking up one morning, having to go to the emergency room was the wake up call that said, Shauné, you have to get, you got to get this together. You have to start doing something serious because now your life, could be in jeopardy. So it was a health scare that was the wake up call.
It is interesting how motivating something like a health scare can be to people. The proverbial kick up the backside to, okay, I've got to take some action here. Yeah. And what about that transition then to eating more of the foods that Neal's described, eating more plant-based? What I'm always interested in is things like cravings and withdrawal symptoms and trying to break those bad habits and those old behavioral patterns around presumably some more junk processed foods. Did you miss anything? Did you crave anything? And if so, how did you overcome those temptations?
Yeah. So, I have to credit my health coach at the time, which is what inspired me to become a health coach. But working with her was what really allowed me to start transitioning to that. And we started simply by just saying, hey, Shauné, let's see if you can fill your plate replaced with more fruits and vegetables, and so for me, it became this gradual transition. But when it came to the cravings, it was a gradual thing. I started to really explore more plant-based substitutions, for things like dairy and eggs, to kind of satisfy those early on cravings, just the different plant-based milks and all of those things and egg replacements. And then, looking at and really trying to discover and experiment with, different vegan recipes. And so, yeah, I just found that the more that I started to eat this way, the more that my body started to crave those foods that are just so much better, right? And so, be patient with yourself is definitely what I would say. And it's what I was, also doing at the time. And just allowing myself to just, see what else is out there, being open to, new ideas and just a world of possibilities, because what I was doing before wasn't working. And so it was, just a matter of I had to just try something different. And I'm just grateful that this has that and that it made the difference.
Well, good for you. It's amazing to hear. And I think one of the big lessons, you've said several really golden nuggets there, I would say, but one thing that really stands out, I would imagine for people at home is that point about, sorry, you didn't use this word, I'm kind of inferring, but familiarity. It's like the more you get used to eating these healthy, clean, whole foods, well, it's incredible how the taste buds adjust, the gut bacteria adjust, and we know what effect that has on cravings and taste preferences too. So is that what you found then, that the more plant food you added to your diet, the more you naturally lust after the stuff you used to eat? Is that right?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. I will say that, changes in diet often require time for your body and taste buds to adjust. But I promise you, the more that I started to have those foods and eat them on a regular, that's what I wanted. Oh my God, I'm craving a salad. Whoever thought?
Yes. Yeah. And so the message being keep going, I suppose, to people at home that are maybe struggling with that transition.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just, and give yourself grace. Like I said, it's not going to happen overnight. But, again, if you're just willing to try and just to be open minded, you'd be amazed with the body and the taste buds, how they can readjust.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing your story. For me, Neal, one of the most compelling ideas of the book is this idea of calorie trapping. Could you explain that to us and why it's so exciting?
Yes, calorie trapping is something that was really not on anyone's radar. But what really brought it forward was a study at Tufts University. Is in Boston. It's one of the premier nutrition research centers in the world. And they did an amazing study. They brought in individuals, and half of them were asked to eat white bread, white rice. The other half were asked to eat whole grain bread, brown rice. The reason it's brown is it has the fiber coating. It hasn't been removed yet. That was all they did. Really, really simple. But what they discovered is that as the fiber went down their digestive tract, it acted like a sponge. And it started trapping calories that they hadn't absorbed yet. And they were carried out with the waste. And don't try this at home. But what the researchers did is they took stool samples from everybody and they isolated the unabsorbed calories and counted it all up and found that your average person with just that change alone was losing about 100 calories a day. In other words, that they weren't able to absorb and turn into fat. Now, 100 calories, not huge, but you're going to add this calorie trapping effect to the effect of appetite-taming, which is good for 200 or 300 calories a day, and the metabolism boost, which is good for another 200 calories. And suddenly you're talking about sustained weight loss because you're just the foods are doing it automatically. So the calorie trapping effect is taking calories out of the body. It's an effect of fiber, high fiber foods. And that's where, unfortunately, our worst enemy is cheese, meat, eggs, fish. Any animal-derived product, they're not a plant. They don't have fiber. They can't trap calories. So you will fill up on cheese. You'll fill up on meat. You'll fill up on fish. But by the time you do, you've absorbed far more calories than you otherwise would have. And so people think, gee, I think I'm eating healthy, aren't I? Why am I gaining weight? It's because your appetite is not being triggered properly and you're not trapping any of those calories. You're just absorbing them and sticking them on your thighs.
Interesting. Yeah, really exciting. I can see why that was of such interest for you to talk about in the book. And in that Tufts trial, that 100-calorie swing, like you say, it's not a startling amount, but I think the principle, the value of that is so obvious that if you
if you compounded that over time, I think I looked at the paper. The Tufts trial, I think, was a 6-week trial, but that
Right.
presumably over months and years, that's going to amount to a significant difference in terms of on the scale, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. And you're adding it up to all the other things you're doing. For example, earlier I was talking about the humble blueberry. It gets its color from anthocyanins, and anthocyanins are, it's kind of nature's painting box. There are dark blue ones, which are in blueberries. There are reddish anthocyanins that are in strawberries. There's a whole range. Researchers in the UK brought in almost 3,000 twins, identical twins. And they did what we call a DEXA scan. It's a special scanning device where you can measure, okay, here's how much thigh fat, here's how much abdominal fat you have, and so forth. Where is the fat in your body? And what they discovered is that within each twin pair, the twin who ate the most anthocyanins had 9% less abdominal fat compared to her genetically identical sister. Genes were obviously not an issue. It had to do with diet. So where are the anthocyanins? Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. But also, if you look at a pear, it has a little sort of a reddish blush on it. That's anthocyanins. It's in many other foods as well. So the anthocyanins, are they boosting your metabolism? Yes, they do some of that effect. But they're also just a marker for a food that has a very low glycemic index, meaning the sugars don't race into your blood quickly. They come in gradually, high in fiber. And the more people eat of these foods, that's a very humble food, but a power food when it comes to weight loss.
No, I'm sold. Brilliant. If I wasn't sold on berries already, I certainly am now. So nutrient rich, are they? But to have those other benefits as well.
Well,
And
they're
so,
also
what do we-
taste rich, though, Ryan. You know, they're also so taste rich. When I wrote the Power Foods Diet, I worked with Dustin Harder, who then came up with a blueberry syrup. Really simple, about 4 or 5 ingredients. And then Lindsay Nixon, who's the other recipe developer, and they're both geniuses, came up with a French toast. And she kind of defatted the French toast. You put the two together, add a little cinnamon, which is also a power food. Cinnamon is, as long as our other spices. And suddenly, you're just enjoying your breakfast. This is not deprivation. In fact, it's familiar. That was what we wanted to have as a special treat on Sunday. Well, you can have it. Do it the right way, plug in the power foods and enjoy it. So it's not suffering, it's not difficult. The transition is really simple if the foods are just bang up tasty.
Yeah, and what a fantastic way to replace the highly artificial, sweet lure of highly processed junk foods, right, with something like berries.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can put the berries in a muffin if you want to. Now, make the muffin the right way. Shauné knows what I'm talking about. You don't take that muffin and break it open and throw a big glob of butter inside. You're gonna ruin it. You're gonna ruin it. But the point is, and the whole reason that I wrote the Power Foods Diet is I wanted them to see the recipes and have their eyes pop and think, this is not going to be hard. This is going to be really fun. So have my blueberry syrup on your French toast. By the way, I mentioned cinnamon. I didn't mean to say anything surprising. Cinnamon contains an aldehyde compound that causes adrenaline secretion in your body, so your metabolism rises. So the amount of cinnamon in a research study would be maybe a teaspoon, something like that. So you might use less if you want, or you put it on your oatmeal or in your cereal or wherever it is. So the idea is you do these together and add all of these ingredients to your foods, and they'll take care of it from there.
Yeah, confession time. I'm a cinnaholic, and cinnamon is cinnamon. Interestingly, it's not as big in the UK as it is in the US for whatever reason. But I'm loading it up. So that's music to my ears for certain. So what do we say then, Neal, to the folks that say, well, a calorie is a calorie? Because clearly there are things happening in the body to whereby it's not quite that simplistic.
A calorie is a calorie. And your average person is taking in a huge number of calories, and they are not able to control their appetite because the calories are not accompanied by fiber and healthy complex carbohydrates that satisfy the appetite. You're not able to burn them off. You're not trapping them there. You're absorbing every last one. And then you think, gee, there's something wrong with me. And then we're hurting ourselves. Because not only are we following, frankly, not very good advice to cut calories and live a life of deprivation, but when we fail, we blame ourselves, and that bleeds into the rest of your life. You're going to be thinking, Maybe I'm not, maybe I wouldn't be a very good employee. Maybe I won't be a very good parent. I don't have willpower, da, da, da. We memorize these things. We carry with them for life. And it's really hard to erase all that stuff. And my message as a physician is to say, stop this. We did not get heavy by violating those kinds of goofy calorie restricting rules. We got there by piling on our plates the foods that were served to us, the foods that were part of our culture that happen to be really calorie dense, and they don't give the body what it needs to be able to reassert control. It is not your fault. It was never your fault. And you're going to be every bit as good of a parent or an employee or a success in any other way as anybody else. And the way I can prove that is we bring the foods back into our diet that really we're built for. And you start to see that success that you deserve. And it comes in and it tastes great along the way. Have my Southwest chili. Have my triple berry sorbet. Enjoy the taste. But while we're doing this, let's heal that hurt that we lived with for so long.
And it sounds great. And obviously we've got Shauné as testament to these theories, right? I mean, the data on how plant-based diets affect body weight and so on and other health markers is truly compelling. But there's something about seeing it with your own eyes, with anecdotal sort of case studies and stories and whatnot. So is it, on the calorie issue, is a reasonable summary then, a calorie is a calorie, but some foods per calorie will give you far more satiation than others?
We did a study where we brought in 62 people who wanted to lose weight, and we randomly assigned half of them to start a Mediterranean diet, which is better than the diet that people were on, but it includes some meat, some chicken, some fish, some olive oil. The other half went on a vegan diet, no animal products, and they also kept oils really low. After 16 weeks, they switched diets. So everybody did both diets and they compared. And what we discovered was that on the Mediterranean diet, people lost effectively no weight at all, despite the fact they wanted to. On the vegan diet, they lost a lot of weight, almost a pound per week. Now, why? It's because exactly what you said, Ryan. If I'm eating chicken fat, fish fat, or even olive oil, which is a healthier type of oil, it's got 9 calories in every single gram. So it will fill me up. But by the time it fills me up, you add it up. You're eating 1,800, 1,900, 2,100 calories a day. On the vegan diet, you're getting a lot of fiber. That fills you up too. And at the point that you are full, you've eaten 200 or 300 calories less per day. You're full. You're satisfied. You don't need any more gas in the tank. You're happy. But you have eaten fewer calories, and the weight just starts to come off for that reason. Plus the calorie trapping, plus the metabolism boosting. They all kick in together.
Yeah, they're a cherry on the cake at the end. But yeah, some foods then offering a greater ratio, a more advantageous, let's say, ratio of sort of fullness and satiety per calorie. I think that's so important for people at home to understand, especially if they're trying to shift some body weight. So, sorry, I'm going back a couple of minutes in the conversation here now. Sorry, Neal. But in terms of foods that have this calorie trapping effect, obviously, we're looking at high fiber foods. Do we have any more examples that we haven't chatted about so far?
Sure. Well, I mentioned grains. That's what they focused on at Tufts. And they focused on particularly rice and wheat. Said, pick the whole grain varieties. That's fine. However, if you look at the label, there's lots of fiber in all the whole grains. It can be quinoa, it can be corn, simple grains. They all have fiber. And then the fruit group, we don't think of fruit as a big source of fiber, but that apple, that orange, that banana, they all have fiber. Next up is the vegetable group, whole range of vegetables, lots of fiber. And the fiber granddaddy of all is that neglected food group, the bean group. Beans have fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber. That's the cholesterol lowering part. By the way, the beans have lots of protein in them. They've got calcium, they've got iron. What beans don't have is a good lobby group, showing how wonderful they are, because that humble bean deserves a little bit of praise.
Yes, we need the bean cabal, the bean society, don't we, to promote their interests.
I'm going to wear a
worldwide.
T-shirt that says, yes, put a bean in your routine.
Oh, I like that. I like that very much. And Shauné, I'm guessing these are the kinds of foods that you're teaching your students about in your classes. I'm curious to know, what are some of your kind of go-to meals right now? Everyone loves to know what people eat. People are curious about that. What about for you right now? What are you going towards when you're in a pinch?
Absolutely. So one of the things I will say that, just prior to eating this way, I started to fear that I wouldn't be able to enjoy the foods that I really loved. And so what Neil has said has just been just amazing because it's the very foods that I now still enjoy. So like the blueberry muffins or the blueberry pancakes or things of that nature, I'm showing my students how to still enjoy these things. So for me, your typical breakfast, as a matter of fact, before I got on, was oatmeal with blueberries and cinnamon, all the things that our body needs. That's a typical breakfast for me, or it might be a tofu scramble or, a just egg scramble, with lots of vegetables. Typical lunch might be a, mixed green salad with hummus, which I absolutely love and sometimes will make myself. And then dinner, I'm a huge, I guess, veggie bowl person. Or Buddha bowls. So I just love roasting vegetables, picking a whole grain like a quinoa or brown rice or something like that, whipping up my own sauce, like a garlic mustard sauce, and just really showing people how easy it is, to eat this way, but then just all the benefits that you're getting from it. So it's definitely doable.
Yeah, it sounds like you're checking all of Neal's boxes there. He's sitting there thinking, "Yeah, you go, Shauné. This is a really tight diet. This is really good." And I think one of the key things that you said there, I mean, it all sounds delicious, and there's lots of thoughts I was thinking about those meals. But I think the first thing that stands out to me is simplicity. This sounds like really simple stuff, and I don't know how is that conscious from you? You're thinking, well, I know I need to keep things simple for me so I can balance this with my lifestyle. If I'm in the kitchen for 5 hours a day, I'm never going to make this sustainable. Is that quite conscious from you?
Oh, absolutely. Married, 3 kids, life is very busy, on my end. So when I am cooking, it is about simplicity. It's about ease. And so, yeah, I take advantage of that with certain dishes and meals that I cook. And even in showing other people, I want them to adopt this lifestyle, right? So I want to show them how easy and doable it is as well. And, you don't have to get overwhelmed. You don't need a million ingredients to whip up something delicious and nutritious.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important message. And Neal, just very quickly, one more question on this fiber conversation, going back to that. When we're eating a whole plant foods focused diet, do we need to be intentional with fiber to get the benefits from it? Or will we just sort of naturally get a good amount by eating kind of a nicely diverse plant-based diet like Shauné's?
For the most part, you'll get it anyway, because let's face it. I mean, people are not able to pull the fiber out of broccoli. It's there. It's gonna come whether you want it or not. The one area to look for is with grains. When grains are refined, there sometimes the fiber is discarded. That's white bread and that's white rice. So they're okay. I mean, if you're in a Chinese restaurant and the only rice they have is the white rice, fine. Go ahead and have it along with your vegetables and tofu and whatever it is. That's a-okay. But whenever you can make a choice with the grains, choose the whole grains and you're going to be better off. Where we run into trouble is that animal products, even supposedly healthy ones like salmon and so forth, they don't have a scrap of fiber. So that's the problem. Every calorie they have goes right into your body. And with something like salmon, it's huge. It's 40% fat if it's Atlantic salmon. And so the fiber is in the plant foods.
Understood. Thank you. I think that's validating for people simply by moving in a more plant-based direction. The likelihood is one's fiber intake's going to skyrocket, right? Very naturally, we would hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it absolutely does. And along with the issues that we just described with regard to calories, because the more fiber you eat, the naturally the fewer calories you're going to eat. But it does other things. The fiber goes down your digestive tract, and in your digestive tract is an eager population of gut bacteria. And if you've been feeding them spam and chicken wings and so forth, they get a little maladjusted over time. But if you feed them plant foods and fiber, that is what they really want. It's like you finally got a rose garden that you're not feeding them like it's a cactus. You're giving them the foods that they really want. So a healthy gut depends on having these high fiber foods. So there's lots of benefits in addition to the weight loss, the cholesterol lowering, and others too.
And very anecdotally here, but I've heard this story from many people. In my university years, when I was 40 pounds heavier myself and my food choices were not so decent then, I can absolutely say with certainty that it was very rare that I could actually feel satisfied and full eating lots of junk foods. I could easily put away, a large meaty Domino's pizza. And honestly, we're talking 30 minutes later, I'm in the Ben and Jerry's. And I could easily do the whole tub. That's what I was like back in the day. Goodness forbid. And the nutrients you're getting are so minimal that an hour after the Ben and Jerry's, I'm thinking, I actually crave fruit, or I crave vegetables. And so,
yes, I'm so glad that, Ryan, that you mentioned that, because you're thinking, well, why is my appetite turn-off switch malfunctioning? I just had a meal. I should be satisfied. I should be done for the day. There is something in your digestive tract called GLP-1. GLP-1 is released in response to food. So you eat a meal, and then your gut makes GLP-1 that goes through the blood to the brain. And it's the signal to the brain saying, we've just had a meal. So you could turn off your hunger now because the food is on board. Stop being hungry. GLP-1 is not elicited very effectively by meaty diets. My research colleague here, Dr. Hanna Kaliova, who's an endocrinologist and the head of our research team, did an amazing study. She brought in research volunteers. She gave them 2 meals on different days. One was a meaty meal. And she then measured the release of GLP-1, and it's really minimal. So to get full on a meaty meal, you need your stomach to stretch so that you can really feel it. You need a little bit of pain and so forth. But that only lasts for so long. Then it goes away, and you're kind of back to where you started. She then fed the very same volunteers a plant-based meal. And she measured in blood samples, the GLP-1 goes right up after the meal. And what does it do? It's not relying on the stomach stretch. It's going to the brain and saying, you don't have to be hungry anymore. Go to the movies or go out with friends or go do something, because eating is like finished. You don't need it now. So the more look around you at the people walking down the sidewalk. What are they eating? Are they getting the GLP-1 effect that they need? No, they're going through life without it. So they're using completely different appetitive cues to regulate their eating. The power foods get your body back to what nature had in mind for you, that normal homeostasis. You don't need a cue to breathe more or to breathe less. It happens automatically. You've got biochemical cues. You should not have to have cues for when to eat or when not to eat. But because we're in such an abnormal food culture, we need to restore that.
Yeah, I'm so with you on this. It should be natural, right? And it's not for most people. And going back to GLP-1, what's interesting about this is, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I think the misconception that a lot of people have when it comes to feeling full and feeling satiated is that it's about the volume or the amount of food you eat. So in other words, if you eat a big meal, that equates to you being full and satisfied for the next 5 or 6 hours to your next meal. If you eat a smaller meal, you're going to be ravenous, you're going to be hungry. What we're looking at when we discover power foods, presumably, is just how much actually, is it about the volume of your meal, or is it about the quality of the nutrients and the breadth of the nutrients?
There are multiple cues that the body uses, and volume is one. But there are others too that, exactly as you said, Ryan, relates to the quality of the nutrients, because if you're not consuming something that stimulates the GLP-1, it just sits dormant. Now, you can buy it. Novo Nordisk will sell you. They can't sell you GLP-1 because that's a natural product, but they make a GLP-1 agonist called semaglutide, or in the US it's marketed as Ozempic or Wegovy. It's the same drug, but they market it under 2 different names. And you inject it every week, and it will go to the brain, and it will stimulate the GLP-1 receptor, just like foods should do. And the cost of it in the United States is $15,600 a year. Now, don't get me wrong, it works. I mean, it does satisfy your appetite, and along with it, people feel pretty sick. And maybe half the people feel really quite sick with it. They nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and so forth. And they may or may not get over it. But they lose weight because their appetite is killed. And then as time goes on, they hit a plateau, and now they're stuck. And their weight doesn't go down anymore. And if they stop paying the $15,000 a year to Novo Nordisk, you know what happens? All that weight comes right back. So it's protection money. And this company, I got to tell you, they pay doctors in the US $27 million a year to promote this drug. You can't pay a doctor to prescribe it. That's illegal. But they can pay them to do speeches on it, or to be a consultant, or to talk with their medical colleagues and that kind of stuff. $27 million a year to promote it. Widely popular because it has a short-term benefit, but long-term, it's just not the answer.
Do you have Wegovy in the US too? Because we don't have Ozempic here. We only have Wegovy. It's been out since about September in the UK here. Do you have both?
We have them both, but it's the same drug. Ozempic came out first as a diabetes treatment, and then the very same drug was then marketed in a slightly different dosage as a weight loss treatment. But it's the same drug.
Mm-hmm. Same drug, different brand, presumably then.
Different name, but it's by
name.
it's the same company. Novo Nordisk makes them both, and they make them both, and they put Ozempic on one bottle and Wegovy on the other bottle, and they sell them both. By the way, they're not just paying doctors, and they are also paying our members of Congress. They're a major they contribute the maximum amount allowed by law to several members of Congress, people running for re-election, and they've been doing this for years, and they're smart business people. They know that one day the Congress is going to vote on whether or not Medicare, our medical system, should pay for their products. So they're buying loyalty there too. And I hope I'm not depressing people too much. My point is that by eating the right foods, your gut has a little Ozempic factory in it. What it makes is GLP-1. And the workers are idle. They're not doing anything because you're not using the foods that turn them on. But wake them up with the right foods, call them power foods. They're going to wake up. They're going to put that GLP-1 in your digestive tract. Your brain will say, oh, thank you. I've been waiting for this. And it turns down the appetite and you feel better.
Yeah, and they're going to make it so much easier for you. It's like you say, they're dormant, those little workers at the moment. They'll make it so much easier for you to get your weight in check and various other things too. Could you explain then which foods might enhance, you may have mentioned several already, which foods might enhance GLP-1 release, production?
Yeah. As is often the case with these things, greasy foods are kind of your worst enemy. It's amazing when a person can take a stick of butter and like nothing happens to your metabolism because these foods just sort of slide into your body and slide into your fat stores. For the GLP-1 triggers, it's really high fiber foods and high complex carbohydrate foods that you want to focus on. If you're choosing a protein-based food, choose the plant proteins. This could be beans or bean products like soybeans turning into tofu and that kind of thing. So within the plant community, think fiber, think complex carbohydrates, think plant proteins.
Yeah, and in the book you make the case, you mentioned butter there, but in the book you make the case that saturated fat can interfere with that production of GLP-1. Is that right?
Saturated fat really has become such a problem for us. When I was a kid growing up, my mother, I got to tell you, my mother, she had 5 kids. How she dealt with us, I have no idea. 6:45 in the morning, we'd wake up and she'd be cooking bacon. You could smell it all the way upstairs. And we'd come down to the kitchen, she'd be pulling the bacon strips out, putting them on a paper towel to drain. And then that hot bacon grease, she would pull up that cast iron pan and pour that grease into a jar because she was going to save it. That's good bacon grease. And she'd put it on a shelf because it solidifies as it cools. And you don't need to send it to a laboratory. The fact that it is a waxy solid at room temperature means it is loaded with saturated fat, which will raise your cholesterol. It's linked to Alzheimer's disease. It's linked to many other issues, but we sort of prize that buttery mouth feel. The next day, she would pour it back in the pan and fry eggs in it. Can't believe any of her kids lived to adulthood the way we ate, I got to tell you. But this saturated fat is a problem in so many ways.
Yeah, it's a wonder that you're here, and it's even more ironic doing what you do now today, Neal, isn't it? And honestly, I resonate because I had an Irish grandmother, and she didn't used to wash her frying pan. And she sadly passed away when I was rather young, but I heard about this story years later and thought, how are any of us still here? It's a wonder.
But you know what? I have to say, just really quick, in memory of my dear sweet mother, eventually, she did kind of see the light. She had a really high cholesterol level. I kept pushing my mother for the longest period of time. She ignored all my advice. And I realized that's because I'm her third-born child, and you really only listen to number 1, maybe number 2. By the time you've had 3 kids, you're not like, you may love them, but you're not paying a lot of attention. Eventually, my mother did take my advice. She did go on a totally vegan diet. Her cholesterol level plummeted dramatically, so much that her doctor was convinced that there was something wrong with his laboratory because he couldn't have a patient whose cholesterol level would drop so much so fast. So she then grabbed a hold of the kitchen and made my father vegan too. I ended up with two vegan parents, although only one of them knew it.
Did that kickstart things for you, looking at this way of eating then?
Me? No, no, I was the one who pushed her.
That was sorry, it was after.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
understood.
this is when we were in adulthood, and I had to, it was amazing. My mother was so resistant to this. She would say, the doctor tells me I should take a drug. I don't know if I want to take the drug. Da 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 da. I said, Mom, change your diet first. Let's do it. And she was, I had to plead with her. I said, Mother, I've been funded by the National Institutes of Health, Mom. You should listen to me. Mom, I've been on television. Mom, I write books. If it's your own son, you don't necessarily pay a lot of attention. But eventually she did, and she discovered how great this was, and she never did actually then need medication after that.
What is that about family members and credibility? You can have all of your patients singing your praises, all these people, again, not to flatter you, Neal, but all of these people online thinking you're the bee's knees, and then your own family don't necessarily respond to your authority or credibility in that way. What's that about?
If you change their diapers, you can't really listen to what they're saying about science.
Yeah. Good answer. I think that's all that needs to be said on it. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And Shauné, just going back again a minute or two in the conversation as we're talking about things like Ozempic, if I can ask you a rather personal question, what made you sure that you wanted a more natural, holistic way to lose weight? And can I ask, was there ever any temptation to try something like Ozempic, or was that actually before your weight loss transformation anyway?
Yeah, so I would say I've tried many things over the years before finding success eating this way, and weight loss medication was one of those things, but it wasn't Wegovy or Ozempic because it wasn't out then. It was one of the other drugs that was out then, and I did not like the way it made me feel. And so in the way my heart was racing, from taking the drug, and so I was like, this can't be the way. And I just remember just longing for wanting to do this naturally. I just really had this desire. There has to be a way for me to lose weight naturally without the drugs, without a procedure, without injections. I tried injections as well. That was one of the many attempts, to lose weight with B12 injections. And so when I say I tried any and everything that came out when it comes to a fad or trend diet, trying to lose weight, nothing was sustainable. And so this time around, I was like, there has to be a way to do this naturally. So that desire was in me, to do it naturally. I remember going to a weight loss consultation because I was at a point where I was considering surgery. And I went to that consultation and got scared from the side effects and just the potential of death, even from surgery. And so I'm thinking, I have 3 young kids at home. This is too risky for me to do. And so I left that consultation determined to figure out how to do this naturally. And I'm just so glad I discovered the power foods and the power foods diet, and just that was the way that worked for me. And yeah, and it's been sustainable. It's been sustainable.
I've been talking about capsaicin in particular to my audience for years, and its thermic effect in increasing metabolic rate, because the studies look really compelling. So what you're talking about is very validating, Neal. So what foods can we be eating to take advantage of this increase in metabolic rate? Presumably anything with capsaicin, presumably.
The capsaicin-rich foods certainly have it. And peppers are actually rated. The people who make them and distribute hot peppers, they have a rating system. And if it's a bell pepper, it really doesn't have much, and that's why it's not hot. And although it's delicious and high in fiber, it doesn't have the metabolism boosting effect that the hot ones do. So use this at your own discretion. Some people like a little heat, other people don't like a lot. But let's say you open up the Power Foods diet. You'll see there my Southwest chili. Okay. It's just asking for a little zing in there. So put it in there and have fun with it. But the other thing, I have to say, there are other foods that augment metabolism by completely other mechanisms. I was talking earlier about the anthocyanin-rich foods like blueberries. They have a little metabolism boosting effect as well. But let me be really clear. Just not doing something will boost your metabolism. Here's what I mean. Let's say you decide, I'm not going to have the cheese on my pizza. I'm going to put on nutritional yeast as extra sauce instead. By not having the cheese, you don't have all that cheese fat. And what that means is the fat that is accumulated in your cells now, the fat in your muscle cells, the fat in your liver cells, it starts to dissipate because there's no new fat coming into them. When the fat comes out of your cells, their metabolism naturally increases. So my point is, a low-fat plant-based diet in and of itself tends to increase the after-meal metabolism.
So the recipe for success is not just the foods you are eating; it's also about what you're avoiding, what you're staying away from, presumably.
You could shut down your after-meal metabolism within a few hours. by ingesting a lot of fat. And this will shock you. Researchers at Yale pioneered this research. They brought in a group of people, young, slim, healthy people, and they put it in an IV line, and they ran a fat infusion, a lipid infusion into their bodies. Don't try this at home. And what they found is that their insulin sensitivity flagged within hours. It goes right down. What's happening? The fat goes into the muscle cells. Insulin is trying to ramp up the muscle cells' metabolism. It tries to get them to pull sugar out of the blood and use that sugar as a metabolic fuel. That's insulin's job. When they're filled with fat, it doesn't work. They then repeated the experiments later, not using an infusion, but using a single meal. And what they found is that after one single fatty meal, your cells get packed with more fat, and it'll interfere with your calorie burn as well. It interferes with your metabolism. So we're setting our metabolism with every meal that we choose. It happens at lunch today, it'll happen at dinner today, it'll happen at breakfast tomorrow morning. You can have a faster or slower metabolism depending on the foods you choose.
And that's fascinating. How temporary is that? So if we're eating a food with a high thermic effect, or something that would actually have the adverse effect, like the example you've just given, a more fatty meal, for how long might that affect metabolic rate? And obviously it depends on particularly what we're talking about and the quantity.
Bad example, good example. Here's the bad example. Come into my laboratory, I'm going to give you a stick of butter to eat. Yuck, you won't do it, but if I pay you $50 as a research subject, you might. So then they eat the stick of butter or 2 sticks of butter, and what happens to their metabolism is nothing, zero, nothing at all. But at the next meal that comes up, and the meal after that, this unfortunate effect persists. I'm interfering with their metabolism because the fat from the butter got into my cells, and now they can't metabolize fat. They can't metabolize calories as well anymore because they're filled with fat. The technical word is intramyocellular lipid. It's fat in muscle cells. Same thing happens in the liver. So my good example, let's say instead of that, let's have brown rice and vegetables and some broccoli and some fruit for dessert. There's very little fat in there. So now the complex carbohydrate that's there will boost your after meal metabolism. That's one of the triggers for it. And that effect will last between 3 and 5 hours. So you're burning calories faster. But for the next meal, because there wasn't much fat in the meal that you just ate, some of the fat that was in your cells is coming out. It's dissipating. And so at the next meal, your metabolism is going to be faster too. So you get the meal effect and the subsequent second meal effect as well.
So for better or worse, it can leak over in, for want of a better word, leak's probably not the right word, but it can spill over to the next meal, in other words, that change in metabolic rate.
And for most people, because they haven't read this book and they've never heard of it, and they haven't been following what Shauné has been saying all this time, what happens is they are interfering with their own metabolism after every single meal. So when a woman reaches the age of menopause, for example, she says, I can't get anywhere, because it's not the menopause effect exactly, it's just years of kind of harming her body inadvertently. And the same thing happens with a guy. He'll say, well, I guess my father was overweight, I'm going to be overweight. What you're doing is you're poisoning your metabolism with each meal choice that you make. Or you're freeing up your metabolism with each meal that you choose based on the food choices you make.
And so every meal counts.
It does. It sets you forward or it sets you back.
Yeah, generally speaking anyway, every meal counts. And to take advantage of all these principles then, so calorie burning foods like we've just talked about, appetite taming, calorie trapping right at the start, what sorts of meals, you mentioned some already, can folks at home put together? And do you cover, it sounds like you do, but do you cover lots of recipes in the book?
We have, as I mentioned, I worked with Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Dixon, who are the world's greatest recipe developers, I have to say. And they came up with more than 120 recipes, and they're rated. Some of them are just using convenience foods. So, you're just picking up something, opening a jar, and that's it. And if you're feeling a little more adventurous, we have recipes that actually you'll use your kitchen, and those are easy. And we have some that are elegant when you want to really make your friends think you are a genius. We have those
dinner
there
parties.
too. Exactly. And I have to say they're wonderful foods. I already mentioned French toast with blueberry syrup. Fabulous. I might have mentioned the wild blueberry muffins. But how about a lentil soup, a mango dal, which is wonderful. Or so many people who are dieting are afraid of pasta because it's got carbs. Come on back in. I've got a penne arrabbiata for you. That's the Italian word for angry, but it means spicy sauce. Beautiful. Southwest chili by Triple Berry Sorbet, which is bright purple. Kids go crazy for this. Or what actually makes kids crazy is we have a blueberry pops. You get popsicle sticks, and you make my blueberry pops. It's got blueberries, it's got bananas in it, and a little bit of cranberry juice. You freeze it in a form, put the popsicle stick in it, and once it's frozen, hot summer day, all the kids are going to think you are the coolest person that they ever saw because you have these great pops. I have some brownies in there. I call them black and blue because they have this will amaze you. They have blueberries in the brownies and a little bit of black beans. I don't know, Shauné, if you've ever done this. You can put some black beans in a brownie and it somehow disappears, but it adds a little fiber and it makes it just a little kind of chewy and nice. Not a huge amount, but a little bit. So my black and blue brownies are going to amaze you. So we have 120 recipes, but don't focus on that. Just focus on having fun. Pick the ones you like. The pictures are gorgeous. They're going to make your mouth water. And then think about, okay, the weight's going to come off. I'm going to now be the official food expert for my whole family. You're going to help them to get healthier too. You're going to have more energy to deal with life. People will comment on how you look, and you're going to get to do what we Americans do best. You're going to get to go shopping because you're going to need some new clothes.
Well, I'm European. We love that stuff too. Any excuse, yeah. And it sounds amazing. And I've got to try that French toast. Incidentally, that sounds great. That's right up my street. And with all the things we've talked about today, Neal, GLP-1, fiber, trapping calories, how much do these factors contribute to weight loss beyond just being in a calorie deficit?
The calorie deficit is part of it. That's really the part with the appetite taming so much. But the others are all they all add to it as well. Keep in mind, your body is not just a big funnel where food goes in and wastes go out. You are a metabolizing system. So your calorie burning speed is modified based on your body's reaction to the foods that you put into it. And most people go into this never having read the owner's manual. So my thought is, for the time that we have left, let's get into the body we want to be in.
Love it. Yeah. So if someone was to eat burgers and ice cream, not your delicious sorbet, but ice cream filled with dairy, a bunch of junk food every day, but they are eating their jalapenos and a little bit of cinnamon and some blueberries, are they going to lose weight?
Yes. I mean, that's a step in the right direction. That's good. But let's not fool around with it because you're eating foods that are going to counteract the effect. And your benefit might be pretty small from just having some small additions to it. Any step you make is a good step. But what I would encourage people to do is to make it really easy. Take 7 days. During the 7 days, don't change your diet. Just try new foods and figure out the ones that you like. And make a list of them. Breakfast, lunches, dinners. Think of the things that you really like. Okay, your French toast was good. Or I made it simple. I just had cereal with soy milk. Soy happens to be one of the power foods. Fine. And Shauné said, I'm going to put blueberries on my oatmeal. I'm going to put cinnamon on my oatmeal. If you like it, write it down. So take a week, come up with your favorites, including your restaurant favorites. If you're going Italian, if you're going Chinese, write down the foods that they have there that include the power foods. After a week, I promise you, your list will be really long. And these are foods that you like and that are going to work. Step 2, 3 weeks. For 21 days, put these foods to work. And during that time, avoid the bad stuff. Avoid the things that are going to interfere with you so that you don't just get a little tiny benefit of adding good things. Get the real benefit that nature has in store for you. Use the power foods, forget everything else. And after 21 days, 2 things are going to happen. One is your body is starting the transformation and you will see it on a scale and you'll feel it in your energy and in your digestion and how you feel mentally. The second thing is your tastes are changing. You haven't had chicken wings in 3 weeks and you discover, it's amazing. I didn't even miss them. And as time goes on, your tastes go into better and better and better direction. And now you're feeling that power yourself. So a week to get ready, 3 weeks to give it a test. And after that, the choice is yours.
No, I think that's a really great action plan that isn't too overwhelming. That's a length of time people can get behind and really commit to and they can imagine themselves doing. And I think the one thing I would add there, if I may, is it's incredible how when you start getting results, it incentivizes you. right? A lot of people give up because they're getting discouraged. They're not seeing that scale drop, or they are, but it feels so aggressive that it's not sustainable. But when you actually can feel full and satisfied, you're watching the scale go down, you feel better in yourself. Hopefully you're getting some lab work done, watching the cholesterol drop. Well, that just incentivizes you to carry on, doesn't it? It's very motivating when you get results.
The reward, yeah, the reward really makes you want to keep going, and it's a wonderful thing, and people will notice it and they'll reward you too.
Mm. And Shauné, I'd like to finish with you, if I may, after such an incredible transformation. What do you say to someone watching this who's flirting with plant-based eating, but they're still a little bit on the fence? They've listened to what we've said today, we've been talking about today, and they're kind of semi-sold on it, but they've got all of those limiting beliefs and bad habits of the past still holding them back. What do you say to that person?
You know what? I would have to, piggyback on what Neal said in terms of just starting slowly. Give it a week, give it 7 days, and just try. I would also encourage them to be open-minded, be open to new possibilities, be open to change. It doesn't have to be everything at once. But if I were not open to this, if I weren't willing to just try, I would not be sitting here talking to you all today. I wouldn't be here sharing my story and how I was able to generate health, restore my health, take my health back, and to lose 100 pounds. And so you just got to be willing. You got to be willing and open to try. So that's what I would encourage them to do.
I love that. So there's no perfect time then, Shauné?
It's not, and I would say don't wait until there's a health scare. If we can get ahead of this and be in a more preventative mode, then I'm all for that. Definitely not a perfect time. Every day you get up and wake up is an opportunity to start and to try to change and to live better.
Well, I think that's a wonderful battle cry to finish on. So thank you. Where can we find the book, The Power Foods Diet? Everything we've talked about today has just been a little snippet. Where can we find it and when is it available?
The publication date is March 26th, and it's on pre-order at all the pre-order sites right now. So if you go on Amazon, they have it there. People are pre-ordering it, and it's delivered to you on the very same day that the bookstores have it. It should be at all the pre-order sites. And if there's a bookstore in your neighborhood that is still surviving and opens the door, go in and get it there.
Give them the business. They need it. They deserve it. So yeah, brilliant. And I'll put links to the book, of course, in the description box down below, as well as Shauné, I'll put your social media down below and some more resources from PCRM and Neal, your stuff down below as well. I want to finish by thanking you both once again for being here. Shauné, it's wonderful to hear about your transformation. The data, as I said earlier, on the positive effects of eating a plant-based diet is so compelling. But to have proof and a great case study right in front of our eyes, it's been amazing. So thank you for sharing your story. Neal, you've been on the front lines, as I said earlier, tip of the spear, promoting this way of eating far before it was cool. I'm not sure if it's cool now, but far before it was cool. Thank you so much for all you do. And if I can make a rather superficial comment, it honestly doesn't look like you've aged in the last 10 years. And the 10 years I've followed you. So it's a wonder, given your obvious work ethic and your devotion to helping people with this stuff, it's a wonder you still seem so vibrant and youthful, if I may say.
Thank you, John. Or thank you, Ryan. Lots more to do, I have to say.
Well, thank you both for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.